you'll indulge me, I'll read it for him. My name is Vance Carruth, and I'm a citizen of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I wish more than anything that I could be there with all of you who have come to the steps of the Lincoln Memorial today, Martin Luther King's birthday. Whatever the weather is, I hope you can find the warmth in the knowledge that you stand before this great monument that honors Abraham Lincoln, a president who through his sheer personal strength and perseverance once prevented this great nation from splitting apart permanently. His most telling statement, made in those deep, dark hours of his deliberations, still resonate with us today. United we stand, divided we fall. And it is that spirit that I share the following thoughts I consider worthy of consideration in these divisive and polarizing times. These times which can truly test each of us in our strength to remain steadfast and positive about the future of our country. I wish to honor each of you by urging you to remember that the time for peaceful, respectful support of our president and the rule of law are long overdue.
Yes. Yes.
Let us lead by example in what we say and what we do. Let us return to the time-honored civil, factual, and dignified rhetoric that was once the norm in our country. Let us be proud of our ability to state our beliefs in such a way that they do not offend those with whom we may adamantly disagree. Let us choose the moral high ground in both our speech and our deeds. And let us stand hand in hand for justice and the common good of all, regardless of race, gender, or sexual orientation. And most of all, in this time of remembrance of Martin Luther King Jr., let us judge others on the content of their character rather than on any of the above. We need to be inclusive of all people and condemn those whose acts and words belittle any American citizen. If we are ever to solve the many enormous problems facing this nation, we must do these things in order to promote the general welfare and prosperity of all good, decent, and hard-working Americans. But most of all, we need to educate and inform based on facts, rather than on rumor and innuendo, name-calling, and fist-throwing. We must demonstrate that we are a peaceful and rational people whose compassion and respectful dialogue can move us forward rather than backward. Therefore, I say to you, let it begin with us. My thoughts and good wishes go out to all of you who have made the sacrifices you needed to make to be here today. It is my hope that you will leave these steps with your heads held high. We must remember always that we are Americans first and foremost. We therefore should embrace all Americans, regardless of how deeply they may disagree with us. Only by all of us understanding that we must work together in order to make this a more perfect union will we ever bridge the gap that separates us. This may be hard for some, but we must. In order for all of us to sleep at night, we must. Better days are possible only if we do. In our efforts to encourage President Obama today, let me end my statement by asking you to join me in quoting him, by once again saying, yes, we can.
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 Yes, we can. And yes, we did. And continue to do. Fired up, ready to go. Fired up, ready to go.
Fired up, ready to go. Fired up, ready to go. Right. Ready to go.
That one's
ready to go. Today's rally is a celebration. It's principally about supporting our president and the agenda he set forth during the campaign. I say principally because, as most of you know, today also marks the birthday of a man, but for whose efforts none of us would be standing here today.
Yes.
I'm referring, of course, to the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And when I speak of his efforts, I include the efforts of the millions of Americans of all races, creeds, and colors who marched, suffered, and in some instances were tragically killed right alongside him. Today we stand upon the shoulders of all those brave men and women. Today not only do we commemorate a great leader in the fight for civil rights, but we celebrate a dream come to fruition. The first anniversary of the election of our 44th President of these United States, Barack Obama.
Yay! That's the man we're here for.
Indeed, this rally is at its core a tribute to all of Dr. King's legacy. A legacy founded upon a simple but unwavering principle: social justice in all things for all people. President Obama campaigned on and still stands for that principle, even when our Congress and the moneyed interests that have a stranglehold on our government stand against it. Transformative change in this country. Transformative change in this country has only come when people have taken to the streets, whether it be the fight against abolition, or the fight for abolition, the fight for women's suffrage, for workers' rights, for civil rights, for farm workers' rights. Such change has, more often than not, come in spite of, and with the very qualified and calculated assistance of, many of our, quote, representatives, unquote, on Capitol Hill. The fight for affordable health care is no different, and neither is the fight for banking reform or the fight for an intelligent foreign policy in the war on terrorism, the fight for equal protection under the law for all Americans, the fight for thoughtful and compassionate immigration reform, the fight to rebuild the U.S. manufacturing base, to rebuild our unions, the fight for environmental responsibility, bettering our public educational system, the fight for affordable access to higher education. The list goes on. Make no mistake, this is a battle, and it will be hard fought and require all of our strength, commitment, and resolve. Now, at this point in the rally, I'd like to take a moment and honor Dr. King by introducing a few from our group who will read from an amended version of his letter from a Birmingham jail. This letter was penned in April of 1963. It was penned while Dr. King was sitting in a jail in Birmingham, Alabama, and it was a response to some of the criticism that he encountered from leaders within the community of Birmingham. You know, it was only a few short months later, in August of 1963, that Dr. King gave his famous I Have a Dream speech, which he delivered from these very steps behind us. Seems like a quick turn of tides from going to a jail to addressing hundreds of thousands on that day. And similarly, it seems like the tide has turned for our president, but only for the worse. You know, crowds in the tens of thousands that saw him on the campaign trail, that greeted him, to no visible support. Not just for him, but for the agenda that he campaigned on. Well, it will take citizens with the same resolve as those who marched during the Civil Rights Movement and every other progress-oriented movement in this nation's history to bring about substantive change. And it's that kind of resolve that Dr. King expressed in his letter from a Birmingham jail. And so I will ask that those who will be reading from that amended letter please step forward and take their place.